everybody, and welcome to Coffee, Tea, or Sex. I'm Karina Velasco, and today Lawrence Lanoff is returning to this beautiful place to have sex.
Yes.
With me and with all of you.
I love it. So we're going to have a moresome today.
We're going to have a moresome on a very interesting topic. I think this question, every single person in the planet except children has thought of it, inquiry, desired, something around why do people have affairs? So Lawrence Lanoff, as a sexuality expert, relationship expert, mind hacker, his iPod cast, which is called The Optimized Mind. I mean, you have so many things, but this is your topic. You really know about this. So that's why I wanted to talk with you. Nobody better than you to talk about this in a realistic way.
Yes, in a reality way, yeah.
Exactly.
It's exciting.
So, why do people have affairs?
I mean, so the first thing to understand is the question of what is an affair, right? So we all have our ideas about what an affair is, and of course there's a script to it. And we follow that script. So it typically is like, I can't believe this person, they lied to me, they cheated on me, they did this thing. And now because of this new piece of information, I must break up with them and the relationship is damaged and the trust is thing and ultimately maybe there's a divorce. There's like this script of what an affair is, which is typically seen as a betrayal of trust, of faith, of unity, of the structure. Loyalty, right, of the relationship. So the relationship is what is destroyed by affairs. In theory, that's kind of how how it goes.
And what about also the narrative, like coming before marriage, like affairs and sexually engaging with other people? When people date, it's also expected, right? If not, it's like, oh, less points for you if you're going to be sexually active with other people. Or that's this narrative, like I see with 21-year-olds still in my country, Mexico. It's like I have some friends who are 21-year-olds and they're like, Karina, no, I cannot go out because if I see other girl and my girlfriend notices, I'll break up. So also, do you think like that shame and that fear or diminishing or the fear of losing something keeps people trapped?
For sure, right? So there's two things. You're speaking of two different things. So let's talk about the first one.
Okay.
Which is a woman's value being determined by who she sleeps with. Right, so one of the reasons...
More guys, more value.
I wish it was that way.
But it's not.
It's not that way. Right, it turns out research shows, I think, the optimal number of men for women to have slept with is no less than 3 and no more than 6. It's like...
No more than 6?
Yeah, that's the... Yeah.
No wonder why I'm not married. Okay, anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, you just plead the Fifth Amendment. How many lovers have you had?
Oh, wait, let me get my book out.
2. I mean, yes. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that because value is placed on essentially the opening of a woman's vagina, right? That's where really a lot of these problems come from. Is this value system being the vulva, like this opening? What has happened? What is the story of what has happened to the opening? That crazy narrative has a lot to do with how people behave, both inside relationships and outside of relationships. So that magic number, and everybody has one, that kind of thing of like, if I cross this line, then I'm a slut, for example. If you cross that number, there's this, your value has been diminished as a human in essence. This is the culture we live in. So
actually, there was a movie in Hollywood, where there was like, I think the 20, like if she was more than 20, she was not a wife material.
I'm not familiar with that movie, but that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And every woman has what that number is for them. I was just recently teaching, and I was up in Northern California, and I was teaching in a place where they were teaching young women that the number value, her value, was the number 1, and that's it. Anything over the number 1, it's over, right? So that is why this is kind of, you have to understand, this is kind of like the framework that creates affairs and the impact of what affairs are and how they come to be and why everything is so secretive and why we can't have a rational discussion about reality. So that's kind of the beginning part, right? The timeline of the narrative of what has happened to your vagina over time. Now for men, it's a little bit different because they can get to a relatively high number by comparison, just because cultural framework says it's okay. We don't have a cultural framework for women, but for men it's just kind of like, oh, he's sowing his wild oats, right?
Yeah, but even I feel like a lot of men are celebrated if they have a lot of women, but they shame a woman if they have a lot of men.
Exactly.
So in this case, the affairs also, in Latino culture, it's very well known that men can go out and cheat, and it's celebrated by their friends, and it's sort of allowed. And the woman has to sort of submit or just negate that, or, don't even talk about it because it's natural that men do that. But when a woman does it, then there's real trouble. So there's like a lot of dynamics regarding affairs from the perspective also of the patriarchal system and the macho kind of like, oh, I can do it or not.
Yeah, but here is an unseen, this is an example of mythology.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you, this is a perfect example of the purpose of mythology. So the mythology of an affair is a storyline, right? And the mythology of machismo, right? This is also a storyline. That storyline is, it's perfectly okay for me to do whatever, and you just suffer and kind of work through it and, whatever, right? But here's my question. Those men are not having sex with pigeons, right? They're not having sex with goats. They're having sex with other humans.
Wait, okay, let me go back. Because a lot of women say, all men cheat.
Exactly.
A lot of my girlfriends, all men cheat. But who do they cheat with?
There is a human body on the other side of that cheating. The difference is for a female-bodied human, you just have to call it something else. Now, over the years of me working with students and clients, I would talk to the men, and the men would be like, yeah, this thing's going on and that thing's going on. I would talk to the women, and the women would be like, oh, I went out with my girlfriends, and I'm like, what happened? I was like, oh, it's just how I just got a little drunk. And I realized that there were all these euphemisms and even passes in female culture so that number, the essential number of female value, was not violated, even though there is room for experimentation. But like, I went out with the girls.
Because if I were drunk and I don't remember,
it doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
Exactly. We were just playing. Come on. There was no, So I realized that there was this sort of double speak happening, because I did the math. I mean, everybody was having sex with somebody else one way or another, or was at the very least thinking about it. So this is why I say when a mythology, what a good mythology does is it sort of points to one thing, like smoke and mirrors, but covers up something else. So what this is covering up, this whole idea of affairs and all this stuff, it's covering up a truth that people do not want you to know. And that truth is that we at our essence are sexual beings. That is the truth. That is what all the evidence tells you. It's just like, it's like porn. Okay, men's porn is, a lot of it is online, a lot of it is in seedy bookstores and magazines. Magazine stores, in fact, you go to a place and it's like, come on in. What do you need there, kid? It's like, come on in. And you just feel like you need a shower after you walk out of a porn shop that caters to men. You've got films happening and just all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's like the seedy part of human sexuality. It's like, wow. Female porn, whereas like the men's porn is in these places and, covered up, right? Female porn is just right in plain sight. It's in the grocery store.
Yeah, and you go in toy store, like all the toys and vibrators, which are beautiful, and it's like, oh, it's my toy.
Yes. Yes. And female porn is in the books. The rows and rows. You have shelves in grocery stores devoted to romance novels. Those romance novels aren't talking about like, and then he kissed her and she said, thank you, but that's enough. No, it's all about hot, juicy sex. It's just in different form. It's in word form. But we all are sexual creatures. Female sexuality, because of the cultural pressures the culture puts on women and on the opening, female sexuality has to happen more undercover. It has to be much more covert. A woman has a good job, and it is typical for people to be like, how did you get that job? Who'd you have to blow? Right? Because we don't have a metaphor for just an empowered, sexually strong, empowered female human who's like in her power, in her sex, in her freedom, and doesn't give a hoot about the number and is just in her freedom, right? We don't have that.
Yeah, that's what I want to create in particular.
Yes, I agree with you.
It's so needed.
It's so needed. Part of it is we have to get rid of these lame discussions about these repressive discussions that give us lots of things to worry about and be stressed about that have nothing to do with anything. Do you want to know if your wife or your boyfriend is, or husband is texting somebody? The answer is yes. Yes, they are texting somebody. Okay? Do not look at their phone. Do not go prying into their thing. We are sexual creatures and we want sex. That is the biggest scam that's enacted on everybody, right? So the first things first is to realize at our core, we are beautiful sexual creatures and we want to experience and taste and flavor and savor life. That is, I would argue that is even at a fundamental level our purpose, to experience more and more pleasure and freedom and spaciousness and love and depth and connection. And you cannot control that. The human sexual drive is unbridled. And when, a lot of times guys are like, oh, now that I'm married, I have to have an affair because my wife won't have sex with me. And I'm like, your wife won't have sex with you because you're having crappy sex with her. That's why she won't have sex with you, because you're not.
Thanks for saying that.
Yes. It's like, don't blame her. It's because you jumped on her, humped her like a bunny, rolled over and fell asleep. Like, this is why. It's like, because sex was 10 minutes long. That's why. It's like, you can only take so much of that before you go, enough is enough.
But if you go back to that, it's like you said, like women, like they like toy stores and it's always playful, and men, it's more like, wow, like more wild, more raw. So of course you also need to learn different skills to be able to be a good lover or love making. So what I understand with what you're saying is like, if you're having crappy sex or great sex in your relationship, still you're gonna have that need to explore your sexuality, or even in a chemical level, your body needs dopamine, which is the new thing.
Yes, that's exactly
so
right.
it's totally natural to feel attraction and to desire other women or other men.
Well, I would argue it's necessary.
Necessary.
Like, it's actually necessary for your well-being. It is not natural to be like one person. This idea of one, right? The one, right? I've traced the roots of this. I mean, they go back pretty far to these early Greek philosopher ideas of symmetry and wholeness. And there were some of these mythologies that were created that we were once this group, this whole group. And then for whatever reason, fill in the blank with why the fall happened. But then we split off. But there is only this one person. And when we get back to that one, they fulfill everything. This is like talking about unicorns that breathe sweet little bubbles and fart rainbows. Like, it's just like, I hear people talk about this, I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? That is so unfair to put all of that on a partner. In fact, I would argue it borders on insanity, but that's what we are told. We're not told the reality that, hey, by the way, this is going to be, relationships are tough. You are going to have moments where you're going to be like, I have made the worst decision in my life in this relationship. You are going to have moments where you're just feeling sublime, but you're going to have moments where you have to deal with reality. And when so many people toss away perfectly good relationships because they no longer have the dopamine. They haven't worked on themselves so that they stimulate the dopamine within themselves. They haven't brought new experiences. They just get into patterns. And yes, they've got the love. They have the oxytocin, which is the love chemical, the bonding, the connection, the depth. But they don't have the new, and they go like, oh, I'm not in love with this person anymore. And I've seen people toss away 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30-year marriages and relationships, perfectly decent, solid things, but because they're like, oh, I don't feel the love anymore, right? That's because
that's chemistry, but we have to understand biology and chemistry in order to shift this perspective and understand our biology, that it's totally natural to always have the urge or to search or to hunt or to feel desired in that playful manner. Like, if you take action or not, it depends on your own agreements, but it's totally natural.
It's the most natural thing in the world.
So why it's so satanized? And it's like one day a girlfriend of mine, she's been married for a long time, and the husband had an affair. And I was like, are you willing to like drop everything, like a beautiful marriage, just because he wanted to fuck somebody else for a day or for 2 days?
It's crazy, right?
Because that destroys everything.
It destroys everything. And there's no reason. There's no reason. It's like, if we could start having adult conversations about reality and radical self-acceptance for our own desires. Radical self-acceptance. That means like, it's so normal. We are sexual, sensual creatures. We need touch. We have known about this since the 1950s. We know that human animals need touch. We need newness. We need dopamine. A life without dopamine is a life that feels like you're dead. So that radical self-acceptance of realizing like, you know what, I'm normal. That when you walk into a room and you're like, who's around? Who's that? But then you have to pretend like, oh, I mean, no, because you're my everything. This is insanity. And when I say insanity, what I mean is it's like we have been sold a lie. It's not even your fault. We have been sold a lie.
And it's good that you mentioned it's not your fault, because of what I've heard a lot also working with clients, and teaching is, what's wrong with me?
Exactly.
Like, my husband went out and had an affair, or my girlfriend wants an open relationship. What's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Could I have done this better? What happened? I created that. This guy cheated on me. So there's also this conversation of what's wrong.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong. It's natural.
It's the most natural thing in the world. What you really need to do for those of you listening to this right now, what you really need to do is you need to start having adult conversations with your partner. Now is the time, because if a relationship cannot sustain adult conversations, then that isn't a relationship based on anything. So if I can't say to you freely, I have desires.
Pretend you're the one.
Yes.
Like, well, how do you start? How do you initiate that conversation?
Well, okay. So I would use this general idea of speaking about what's scariest first. Okay, because if you can speak about what you're most afraid of, it's like what we've spoken about before, where you move towards the gunfire, not away from it. So what am I most afraid of? I'm most afraid that if I tell you that I'm attracted to other people, you will feel like I don't love you and I don't care about you, and you're going to feel like your self-esteem is low, and then you're not going to trust me, and then you're going to think something's wrong with you and something's wrong with the marriage, and I go all the way. You just go all the way into your deepest, darkest fears. And, going a little bit further, which is what most people are afraid of, I'm afraid that if you see what a horny bastard I actually am, if you see just what a horn dog I am, that you won't love me. Right? So if we can, that's the radical self-acceptance.
Because that's also that shame part for, like, as women are shamed and like property in the sense of like the pussy's mine, like the men are shamed because they're sexual and they're horny and they're kinky.
That's right. Well, everybody's kinky. That's the beauty. Like everybody has things that they don't want you to know about themselves. Everybody, because we're humans. So if we start with we're sexual animals and we need touch, and then we realize that also all those things that you think are wrong with you, I cannot tell you how many students have come to me at different times and said, like whispering to me and being like, I'm broken. No.
They broke my heart.
They broke my heart. No. If we really go inside and start thinking about what we want, here's the thing. If you radically self-accept your desires, let's just say you do, you just radically self-accept them. And I said to my partner, I was like, okay, this person over here, there will be no consequences. You're going to have some of the best sex of your life. You're going to stimulate dopamine. You're going to have some great orgasms, and he's got a great cock. Like, where's the downside? You just be like, and there's literally no consequences.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Exactly. Right? So if we just kind of start having that framework that I can shake your hand, right? And this is fine, but if this hand touches those parts down there, it's World War III. That's crazy. It's just cells touching other cells. There's no line at your belly button. There's not like a demilitarized zone. It's purely mythological. It's purely psychological. We have to change our beliefs and our mythologies, our symbols for what's okay and what's not okay. I assert to you, if you go all the way there, I can say to you, you are an adult. I trust your ability to make decisions, and you are free as a human to do, as an adult human is able to do with your body what you wish.
Yeah, and it's like, if my arm doesn't belong to my boyfriend or my husband, or my nose, he doesn't control, like, if I go to the gym or if I run or sneeze, like, why the control in our sexual organs?
That's it. It's purely made up. Mm-hmm. It's purely psychological. It's purely cultural mythology that placed value on the opening. That's it. We placed value because the opening has everything to do with reproduction, which was a big issue. We don't have that issue. DNA test. It's just the philosophies that created that, this whole thing of bloodlines and passing stuff down. Like, we don't live in this world.
And there's a lot of, narratives, like a couple of 21-year-olds I was talking about sex the other day, and they were like, yeah, I don't want to date that girl because she has been touched too much. And I thought that was like such nonsense, because it's like, oh, I don't want to say hi to you because you've been in the subway in New York grabbing like into germs and things, and then you come and like grab your kid's cheeks. I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy. That lets you know that you've entered the land of mythological delusion. When a body part is not allowed to touch another body part, purely because of the morality around that body part, you are in la la land. And that's the part that I think is really, it's a very adult conversation for people to say, you know what, this is my pussy, this is my cock, this is my body, period. It is not open for discussion. It is not open for like ownership negotiation. You're not property.
Well, that sounds idyllic and very real, but what happens, for example, for the people right now that have affairs? Like, how can they talk about it, communicate about it? Because I've also found that there's always like, why? But why did you have an affair? And what's her name? And what did she do? Like, you want the details instead of like really what's going on here. Yeah,
well, because if we take a broad scope, I'm just going to go 30,000 feet for a second.
Go for it.
Okay, 30,000 feet. The bottom line is humans fuck. Period. This is what we do. Humans have sex. We are sexual creatures, right? Now, where you go with that?
How often do we need sex? Because that's also like people are not having sex.
Well, that's it. I mean, you know, my experience is one way or another, when sexual energy is alive and in our bodies, it's flowing through our mind and our body all the time. And you can isolate yourself for sure, and you can be like, I'm focused, I'm not going to do those things, I'm going to transcend. But the reality is we're sexual creatures. We need touch regularly. We certainly need to touch ourselves. We need to stimulate our minds. We need stimulation. The worst thing you can do to a human is throw them in isolation. This is the worst torture. You take somebody who's a criminal, you stick them into solitary confinement. No touch, no communication. If that's the worst thing you can do to a human, that's essentially what we're doing in monogamy, right? And I don't hit on monogamy.
Or single people.
Or single people.
If you're not dating, then you're like, oh no, I'm gonna wait for Prince Charming, and years passes and you're just dying.
That's it. So I think the thing is really just adult conversations and really looking at the reality. We are sexual beings. Our very existence depends on sex. And we have turned it into a moral conversation. It is not a moral conversation. That is really the issue. So if we can upgrade, that's an upgrade. That's an optimization. What do you specifically need for pleasure? I know some people who are not that sexual, but typically they're not that sexual because they haven't really had a reference point that has opened them up to what true sexual energy is. And when I say true sexual energy, I'm not saying true with a capital T. I'm saying the experience of a full body orgasm, of your brain exploding in cosmic bliss. Because if they had that experience, they would want that on a regular basis.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes, please, 2 to go, or 4.
4. I'll have what she's having.
I know.
Right? And
that's amazing.
That is the point.
No, and thanks for like touching base on this, issue, because I hear it all the time. So now we know, why do people have affairs? Because it's natural to be sexual beings.
That's it.
As simple as that.
That is as simple as it is, and our job is to really just change the quality of the conversations and the beliefs that we have around those affairs. And that, it's like
a shift.
It's a paradigm shift. That is a true paradigm shift.
Well, thank you so much. I love having you in the show. So come back anytime.
Why, thank you. My pleasure.
Where can we find you, Lawrence?
You can find me at www.lawrencelanoff.com. And please, right now, head over to the Optimized Mind on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, anywhere where your favorite podcasts are. And of course, you can also find me on YouTube. I love sharing great ideas like these. And
yeah, right now that you were describing the full body orgasm, he has like an amazing meditation you can do for 21 days, I think it is, and you're gonna have a scoop of what that feels like, and it's incredible. Thank you, Lawrence. I love you.
I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thank you guys. Have a wonderful, beautiful afternoon, and don't forget to have sex on a daily basis.